Hello there to all of you watching this via replay. My name is Corey, if we've not met, and I am a husband, father, a podcaster. I host a weekly broadcast called Existential Sunday, which this is kind of like, I guess it's kind of like Existential Friday, but it's a space for folks that are going through some decolonizing or deconstructing of their faith or their worldview or whatever it is, right? If you were in one place with how you think, but now you're in a different place and you just want a safe space to be in that tension, that's what this space is for. So welcome to all of you who may be watching this for the first time, all of you watching live, all of you watching the replay who have watched before. You know what to do. Hit the share button, the like button, comment, all that stuff. Do that, and afterwards I'll come through and say hello to you all in the comments. I'm going to be really brief today because it's Friday, so nobody wants to be sitting here watching me talk all day. But I actually still came on because I said I would. And as the week went on, I was kind of like, man, I really don't have a lot to say about Good Friday. And I wanted to like something that's meaningful to people beyond just a narrow Christian view of things, right? I'd like to say stuff that really I feel like is helpful, whether you find yourself a part of a faith tradition or not. But I do think there is something about what today means in like the Christian tradition that I think is applicable to everybody. So I'm going to attempt to try to like say that to you. Okay. Before I do, let me start by like establishing a little bit of how I want to talk about this and where my mind is at with all of it. Can you turn that on? Do not disturb, please, because it's going to distract me and I'm live. So let me build like a bit of a frame for how I want to talk about this. The way I view the way people look at the world is through a couple of different or on top of a couple of different pillars. I heard this from Richard Rohr several years ago that when it comes to faith, people have their experience, sacred text, and their tradition. My friends in the Nazarene tradition have said that there's another one, which is reason. So you have these four pillars, if you will, for how we sort of view things. And even when you think about it from like a United States, we've got our experience, we have our tradition, we have our Constitution, which is kind of sacred text, and then we have our own reason, how we think about things. I mean, it's just any sort of ordering of the world, you have that. What's interesting about the Christian faith in particular, which is the tradition that I come from, is that many Christians think that they only operate from the sacred text frame, or that the pillar of sacred text is all that they have. And if the Bible says it, then I believe it, and that's it. It's really not true. None of us come to the table without our tradition, without our own reason, and without our own experience when it comes to how we view things. Okay, so I want to say that very clearly. And as I begin to talk about what I'm about to talk about, I am talking about it from my experience, from my somewhat of my tradition, my own reason, and from how I view some of the sacred text. Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about this moment that Jesus had, as the story goes, that you read in the scriptures about Jesus on the cross, and even before the cross, actually. And to help it kind of make a little bit of sense to you, like the feeling of it. I know this is going to feel ridiculous to some of you, maybe even feel ridiculous to me after I say it out loud, but it is what it is. We recently found out that with our new puppy, who I showed those of you who watched Existential Sunday, our new puppy we recently found out that she's going to have to start enduring some alone time, right? She's going to have to start being in her playpen by herself. We're going to have to leave her. And it's like one of the, I know I've become a dog person overnight. It's like so sad to me because she just cries. She's going to cry and cry and cry. She's going to feel abandoned. She's going to feel forsaken. She's going to feel all by herself as she endures this like little bit of puppy suffering, right? And I just, as like, you know, the doggy granddad that I am, I feel so sad. And I'm like, is there another way to get this dog to like not have separation anxiety besides just throwing her into the middle of it and letting her cry it out? And when I think about the story of Jesus, first, I think about like this garden experience where, for those of you that know the story, those of you that don't know the story, Jesus was in the garden during his Passion Week and before he was arrested and before ultimately crucified. He was in the garden and he's praying, and his prayer is, if it's possible, is there any other possible way to go about this plan that as the scripture goes, was God's plan for saving the world? Like, is there any other way of doing this other than me having to suffer the way that I'm about to have to suffer? Which is sort of the first thing I want you to sort of think about, that is universally true. That is true of every human being, that when we are confronted with suffering in the world, we are thrust into the existential crisis that Jesus started with. Does it have to be this way? Like, is there any other way? Like, we start to negotiate and barter with the suffering, and we start going like, does it have to be this hard all the time? Does it have to be this rough? Does it have to be this way? And I think that like that resonates across the board, whether you are a person who's a part of a faith tradition or just somebody who's watching this because somebody asked you to watch it. Like, I think that in today, like the tradition of Christianity, which I believe should enhance our lives more than it tries to change us from who we are. Let me say that again in a better way. I think that religion, faith practice in its purest form, enhances, it makes better, it helps to make sense of the world in more ways than it tries to convert you to believe things that are hard to believe, damn near impossible to believe. Okay, so there's the first piece where like this when we encounter suffering, that we go, does it have to be this way? And then the second one was Jesus on the cross. And there's this statement that he makes, this existential crisis that, again, many of us find ourselves in, that if you've ever been a part of a Christian tradition or faith tradition, you probably didn't feel the space to go here. But Jesus went there and he said, God, basically, where the hell are you? I'm suffering. I've done everything that I'm supposed to have done. I'm like, this suffering doesn't make sense. This is like, when we talk about the term senseless violence, like, right, there's this thing that's happening that doesn't make sense, that shouldn't be happening, but it's awful. And your first question, if you've had any proximity to religion or faith or spirituality, is, where is God? If there is a God, how is it that this really terrible thing is happening in the world, is happening to me, has happened to my neighbors, has happened to my brother and my sister? Like, how, if there is God, and this God is supposed to be all powerful and all knowing and all of the alls that God is supposed to be, how is this thing happening? And Jesus, from the cross, just like any other human being, has an existential crisis of faith. And he says, why have you forsaken me? Now, for those of you who kind of have this worldview that Jesus is God, always has been God, this is an interesting thing for you to wrestle with, not to argue with, but to wrestle with. Don't get into DMs or in the comments trying to argue, because some of you don't live into the fullness of your life because you spend so much time trying to defend and argue your points, and you're not actually letting things that feel dissonant and feel like they're challenging you sit with you long enough for you to wrestle with it. I forgot water. Dang it. But some of you need to let that challenge you. If Jesus is God, then what is this moment where Jesus says, my God, why am I in this by myself? Why am I left alone in this suffering? And today is not a day about redemption. It's not a day about like, but joy comes in the morning. Today is a day about sorrow. And I know this is dark and it's supposed to be dark. I'm inviting you to experience and to live into the part of spirituality that is wrestling with and sitting in lament and sadness and anger and rage and forsakenness and destitute feelings of empty spirituality, of staring at the ceiling type prayers that every one of us has prayed if you're a person who's prayed, that every one of us has felt. That even among us folks that are atheist, agnostic, and Christian, and Hindu, and Muslim, and Buddhist, and everything in between, we've all had this moment where we're faced with something that felt so big and scary and beyond us, whether it's a challenge with our children or in our marriage or in our partnerships or in our at work with our physical bodies, pain that we may have been in. We've all had these moments where we're being honest. We kind of look up to like, where is the answer? Where's the help? Where is the solution? And none can be found. And that is what we call Good Friday. And I guess we call it good because it's a part of everyone's human experience. It's a part of being human, being alive, is to have moments of, I don't know where my help is. I don't know where my solution is. I don't know where my comfort is. Yeah. I think that we can offer that to each other as human beings, that we can give each other the head nod, the fist bump of, yeah, I know what that feels like. And today is a day about leaning into that feeling and sitting in that feeling and not running to quickly resolve that feeling, but sitting in the divinely human space that is, sometimes I feel abandoned, hopeless, and lost. Grace and peace. Until next time.